Hey, today I'm very excited to share Arrow North Design's new Compass Launchpad offering. Currently in beta, the Compass Launchpad allows startup owners to validate their product idea the first time. Whether you have an idea, you have a piece of software that you're trying to get out into the market, the Compass Launchpad helps you validate that the first time before spending a lot on expensive development costs. Today, I'm going to go over everything that this entails, all the details that you can expect during a project like this, as well as some traditional approaches that Arrow North stays away from during this process. If you're interested in validating your product idea correctly the first time, go ahead and sign up using the link below, and we can get started as soon as possible. However, I'm going to go ahead and jump into Figma so we can talk about all the details within the Compass Launchpad. To start, I want to talk about the traditional approach for creating software. That is, you have your idea, you have the piece of software or the SaaS or the integration into your current physical products, whatever that might be, you have that initial idea. Then you're not able to execute on that idea. Let's say you're lacking in the engineering skills or the design skills, whatever it might be, but you hire a freelance team. I've been involved in projects in the past where clients have gone through the design process. We get to engineering, and then the engineering takes 3, 6, 9 months in order for the product to get built. And essentially, this is what leads to this long timeline because either the design wasn't correct in the first place, because the correct questions weren't being asked, the team didn't validate that solution in the first place, or it was technically challenging, so the engineering team could not fulfill on the proper design. This leads to a long timeline. Then the product is finally done over the long time horizon, and it leads to lackluster go-to-market results because either the founder couldn't focus on marketing at the time due to the limitations within the lack of expertise somewhere in here, or the long timeline, right? So then they launch the product and it's not to the success that they have in mind due to the lackluster results within this particular area. The core problems here is that this process is a founder-led model. What does that mean? That means that the founder has the initial idea here and they go to execute to get it out into the market. However, this is the first core problem. The second is that chances are you didn't hire the correct people out of the gate. Even if you're working with unique experts, their process isn't necessarily going to be aligned with the founder's process or with the best way to approach it within the industry that you're working in. So you might have a team that has no urgency to build it right the first time, right? So yes, the software is completed correctly the first time, but it's from an inexperienced or non-data driven approach, which I will get to in a second. Then there is lack of justification somewhere within this first area. So between your idea and your freelance team or your go-to-market, which you have a lack of justification around, or founders have a lack of justification around this. And oftentimes I find that some founders use an excuse of an NDA in order to not continue to move this piece forward into getting it out into the public. And ultimately that is just an excuse, because even if you have personal identifiable information, there are ways to validate your idea before you take this to market. And then there is usually some imperfections or perfectionism within this timeline too. So if you're working with a team and they don't get it right the first time, that can lead to a long timeline because the perfectionist window here is screaming inside most founders to say, hey, this needs to be right the first time. And it's just leading to longer timelines, which then again leads to lackluster go-to-market results, because during this time of building right here, things change. There's a million things that can go sideways. There are pivots that are needed. And if the founder is focused on this area here and not necessarily here, that's what leads to a lackluster result with the traditional approach. So how does Arrow North define this with the Compass Launchpad? As you can see, there are a few steps here, but that doesn't necessarily mean that there's an extended timeline, and I will get into that. So this is Arrow North's design approach to creating custom software with the Compass Launchpad. And the Compass Launchpad really helps you take this initial idea and then get it out into market, a 0 to 1 concepting. So we start with ideating with you problem areas that you believe the industry is facing. So let's say you already have the idea. We list out all of those problems and we really start with that research validation to ensure that these problems are actually there, that you have specific insights around those problems. We seek to understand that first. Then we create a prototype of a solution. So this isn't a full scale development window. This isn't a bunch of design screens that we need to go ahead and get developed. This is a simple prototype that helps us validate this with customer interest first. After that validation process, we use that research and insights to refine the problem, both the problem and the solution. So this area, we are not saying that we found the right problem and the right solution the first time. That's not correct because we don't have the proper validation from customers in order to define that. So we need to refine the problem and solution within this middle step here based off the research that we collected during these first two phases. Then when you work with the Compass Launchpad, you're working with an expert delivery team. So not only do we have the infrastructure for the efficiency that a lot of startups need in order to get to the market, but you're also working with a designer with 10 years experience for myself, but also with engineering who has experience over 10 years as well. So you're working with an expert team who has done this before, has launched successful products and really gotten that to market. Then when we help you launch, we go to market with customers validating the product already. So after we build here, and this is really just that initial phasing of going 0 to 1, then we get it out into the market with customers with that customer justification in the first place. This step essentially allows us to go back to the prototyping phase, which then we can again repeat this process. So when we launch with customers, we are able to then validate that this process was the best case because we leverage the data along the process. So the core solutions here is that we have a customer-led justification. Rather than a founder-led justification, we seek to validate the ideas with customers first within the first two phases, rather than validating that with just stakeholders. Then we refine the problem and solution, which is unique to the Compass Launchpad because we essentially are not assuming that we have the perfect problem and solution within these first two phases. Within the third phase, we are saying, okay, do we have the right problem? And are we moving forward with the ideal solution that we believe based off the research collected? After that, you work with an expert team. So the founder isn't having to have a large feedback loops, large revision loops. You're working with an expert team in order to get that market out within the best state the first time. Again, going back to that perfectionist loop, we don't seek to have the perfect design or the perfect engineering. We seek to put that back in front of customers and let the feedback continue to loop. Does that mean that there are lots of bugs and issues in the design? No, that's not what that means, because I would never let our quality control get outside of that. So that's why you're working with an expert team, because the quality control piece is here. It's not on the founders. Then we push founders to launch. That is the other piece. So it's go to market launch with customers. We want you to launch the product so we can go back to validating the idea and continue to help the business succeed. So let's compare these two. With a traditional approach, this usually defines the founder's wants over the user needs in the first steps. With Arrow North, we define the user needs with the founder industry insights. So as a founder, you most likely have industry insights that are non-comparable to other people in the market. If you're hoping to launch a new business or a new software platform, chances are you have an insight and an idea, going back to this piece, that you want to see validated. You want this piece to work. So that's why we define it with user needs to say, hey, is your idea valid? Let's go ask the users. In a traditional sense, and I've been involved in lots of projects where everything is built before they share the idea. And I'm going to pause on the concept of the NDA because I can understand there are a lot of semantics involved there. But in a sense where you don't have a strict NDA, I've been involved in projects where everything is built, not only design, but engineering first, which is a common issue, rather than prototyping the idea and then sharing it with validation afterwards. This process allows us to say, hey, is this idea actually something that customers are struggling with? And are they willing to pay for your solution and then not lose it? That's even further validation that we want to refine. Next, in a traditional approach, if founders even get it to launch, they only launch with friends and family via the platform only. So they say, hey, I only want people that are close to me or close connections within my portal first, and then I want to only ask them for feedback. This is, again, a problem because it's not public facing. Chances are those people are going to have some sort of bias towards the solution, specifically if they are pretty close to your industry. And again, that is amazing. If they are close to the industry, it can provide insights, but you don't want them to be so close to you that they're still a friend or they won't provide those deep insights that we really seek. That's where we refine the problem and solution based on the insight from the prototype from third parties. So if you already have connections, you are not putting that prototype in front of those connections. The expert team is helping to put these items in front of unique users to ensure that we have the solution based the first time. In a traditional approach, the ideation After launch usually goes back to more nice to have features. Founders or stakeholders say, hey, I want to see this in the app, or I feel like this could be an excellent feature with no justification. So that's that nice to have piece that I often see as well, rather than launching with user interest and validation at the start. So we launch with the user interest that we built up through the prototyping process, and then we continue to seek to justify this. Last, for the traditional approach, usually design or dev or both end up stopping or pausing for funding. So let's say the development cycle becomes lengthy, the product launch isn't as successful as it was going to be, and that puts the founder in a very sticky situation to not be able to continue to fund the current product lifecycle, which is again an unfortunate outcome for most founders, rather than continuing to leverage the data for more progress and features over time. If we say, hey, users are really interested in this, we're seeing the validation there. However, we could add A, B, and C to the product to make it better. How do we want to approach that over time? That lets us justify that with user interest going back to the prototyping process, right? So we launch and then we say, hey, how can we improve this? What can we continue to refine? And then that's where the process starts over. Okay, we have an idea based off what we're already seeing with the product. Then we go to prototype and then we refine. So how do we ensure a successful outcome? I want to break this down into phases and example deliverables. However, each project is unique, but these are deliverables you can expect during each phase when you work with us. And I am going to get into some simple work that you can expect. So first, like I mentioned, is the ideation phase. This is where we're going over user research. We're communicating with the audience. We're seeking to make sure that the problems that the founders or the companies that are coming to us with are actually there. Deliverables during this state are usually a user personas, a user experience outline, which essentially allows us to view the app from a holistic point of view. So as you can see here, the user lands on the dashboard and home. The sign up process is somewhere over here. So the user lands on the dashboard and home, and then they can continue to move through the product within a skeleton similar to this. So we get a holistic view of all the features, all of the actions that the user needs to take before I've even jumped into design. We also prioritize our ideas to make sure that the ideas that we're putting up in the forefront for the prototype are the actual ideas that we want to take to market that the customer is having the most problems with. Next, we go to phase 2, which is finding product market fit, validating assumptions, assigning task definitions, mapping the movement of the app. These are all items that contribute to the prototype. We are also defining the prototype and designing that with UI wireframes. So if I go back to phase 2 here, you can see we have some wireframe examples. These are low fidelity wireframes that allow us to get the concept into a tool like Figma, for example, or Webflow, where we have no code prototyping skills. And we're able to say, okay, in the sense of a website, does this navigation work, right? And this is a little bit pixelated because this is just a screenshot, right? But is this navigation work or is it too lengthy? We're able to test that without even jumping into design. We're able to do this very quickly. We also set metrics for how large the scope of the project is going to be. And then after we've done these two things, we jump right into audience research, which is more of these data-based pieces here. I can't necessarily share all the details for these pieces because I pulled them exactly from previous projects where we had data-based outcomes. For example, we ran a quantitative-based study with some app features that we were seeking to validate. And these are some outcomes from that. So not only did we get all the user feedback and the insights that we need, but we were also able to visualize that so that we could continue to move forward with the proper justification. Moving along with phase 3 of the project, we identify improvement areas based off the prototyping process. We redefine the UX. So we say, okay, were there any gaps in this UX process during the prototype? What did users say about the experience? How can we continue to improve it? And then we set our key metrics and definitions based off those improvements. So we say, okay, we validated the first round of ideas. We found what we were right about. We found what we were wrong about. So then now let's define the metrics and make sure that those pieces are in place. We also define the information architecture, or IA. So we define the information that should be displayed to the user. Let's say there's particular content or things that they need to figure out, right? We want to go ahead and define that and make sure that that is present for the next round of prototyping. And for phase 3, some examples could include, this is where we really get into the timelines of the project, site mapping. So this is anything where it's like features and then again, that content that is presented. So for example, we need to have diagram numbers within this project. These are all very specific things to the project that we are now defining because we were able to just justify the idea, right? Phase 2 is just to justify the idea and the solution in the first place. Phase 3 is to confirm that we want to continue to move forward with that. And so this is a bit of a more holistic approach in the sense that we're defining timelines. We're making sure that things are going to progress steadily based on that initial insight that we got during the prototyping process. Then during phase 4, you're working with our expert delivery team. So we not only have the data-driven approach leading up to phase 4, which is that data-driven expertise that we're bringing to the table, but we're also defining navigation and onboarding. We're branding the UI. We're creating high fidelity design. We're prepping for development. This is all after we've validated the idea in the first place. So the first 3 steps are just for validation. And then we jump into the real nitty-gritty execution, where we're able to customize the design. We're able to make the interface beautiful. We're able to spend a lot of time on the navigation and what the user should go through for the onboarding. Major key pieces of the app that we don't need to necessarily worry about during these first items if we haven't validated the product idea yet. So what does this look like? Because this is the fun part, right? I definitely want to share this. This is where we, again, define the colors. You can see we define some type here. This is a holistic design guide that we did. And then we have some interface design. This is an HMI, so human machine interface. We also did some mobile app concepting here that you can see with these great mock-ups for the app, as well as just some desktop designs here. So that's all in phase 4. We're really doing the creative stuff in phase 4, and that's my favorite phase. And I need to call out the last phase because we want teams to launch. We want teams to move forward. And that's why I really need to call out the last phase here, because the last phase is launch. After we've completed this process, we need to launch. We need to get it out here, because then we're able to take all the delivery from here and go back to the ideation phase, but with user insights at the top of mind. We say, okay, we've already done all this work. How can we make it better? What are we missing? What else have users said? And then that's where we continue to find the problem areas. But during the last step, you can expect quick feedback loops and cycles, accessibility refinements if we miss anything along the way. We're not only building in public, but we have a human-focused element to this. So we're not asking the users, what else could you get out of this product and how can it continue to benefit you towards that solution? And again, this is where the expert infrastructure comes into place, because you continue to work with us. We build a relationship not only with the users, but we build the relationship with the team and continuing to execute. So during the last phase, you can expect a lot of code. These are different mockups with the interactions. You can see we're creating those micro interactions. We're defining the user experience with key questions. And we're also defining how we can continue to collect research over time. We want to continue the research process because we don't want to stop and let the product become stagnant. We want to continue to move it forward so that customers can continue to leverage the product and want the product within their day-to-day usage immediately. And then, so we have some prompting question samples here. So again, this is during the user interview process. What process do we want them to go through? We're asking them specific actions. And this is a more one-on-one qualitative based process rather than a quantitative based process, which we're doing during phase 2. This is more quantitative because we want to seek that the problem is actually there and that our solution is valid. And we want to do that on a larger scale rather than towards the end of the last phase, we want to get more specific. That's where the quantitative piece comes in, where we're having specific user interviews. We're seeking to continue to understand the idea. That's not to say we're not doing that during phase 2. We are, but it's more emphasis on phase 5. We want to make sure that these pieces are in place during the 5th phase. So just to go over everything that I covered, because I usually like to define this as the 5 C's. So the 5 C's. First, we want to start the first C, we want to start with a clear problem and solutions that align with your ideal audience, right? We want, and again, that first C is clear. We want to be very clear about what the problem and the potential solutions are. Then for the second C, we want to concept. We want to justify the resourcing before anybody spends a lot of time and effort. For you spend a lot of time and effort, before you spend a bunch of money developing this, before we spend a bunch of money within the execution, we want to make sure that the concept is justified before putting in any resources. The third C, we want a customer-focused solution. That's where we're continuing to refine the product and the solution based off our ideas here. So not only did we get clear about what everybody involved wants to achieve, what the actual problem is, but then we're asking the customer, hey, is this the problem that you are solving? And we're being very customer focused. The fourth C, we are leveraging client data from successful projects. That's where our expertise comes in. And that's why the fourth C is client leverage data, because we are taking the data that we found from users on a previous project because it's specifically focused on an industry. There are specifics that are unique to each project, but we have the experience and the data from the previous projects to bring in as a best practice. Let's say there are accessibility pieces that we found, or new trends in user experience, or new ways to approach onboarding. We are taking that data, expertise from an expertise led team, and leveraging that for all of our new projects, right? So we're not gatekeeping any of the information or any of the best practices that we find. We're not only continuing to test that with clients we currently have, but we're continuing to implement it as we continue to scale with new clients. And then last is consistent. And I think that this is the big one with these 5 C's here, because consistent launch of solutions based on user feedback is the real key. Because it's not, my goal is not to get clients back up to clarify their problems. My goal is to consistently launch solutions that provide impact to the user, to continue to make sure that the product is actually useful for the user. We don't want them to get involved and then uninvolved in that case, because we want to make sure that the product continues to work for your ideal user and continues to justify that for them. So this is the entire process that Aeronorth goes through with the Compass Launchpad. I am very excited that we are now in beta for this program. I just went through all 5 phases of all of the steps that the Compass Launchpad includes when we deliver to clients. And ultimately, I'm really excited to continue to see success from this process. We've had success in the past with clients following this data-driven model, and I want to continue to leverage this towards more clients and more people that can definitely support this based off data insights, not just me making an interface beautiful. So if this is something that you're interested in, go ahead and sign up now, because we are offering a lower cost during this beta process to make sure that we can continue to refine this process and make sure that we are allowing new clients to work with us within a limited time frame. So definitely go ahead and sign up using the link below so you can chat with me about your project, and then we'll get everything kicked off. Thanks for watching.